Hello. All right, I want to share with you briefly about a very, very important concept from the Word of God that I title God's Dream. All right, so there's such a thing as God's Dream, which is a little bit different from what we popularly know from our own dreams as humans. Okay, so but it's not in the understanding of many people that there's such a thing as God's dream that we should live by or we should live our life with. All right. So when we say God's dream, we're talking about the fact that the same way people say they can have a dream of something they want to be. Someone would say, "I want to be maybe a lawyer. I want to be a doctor. I want to be an architect. I want to be a pilot. I want to be an engineer, or I want to be a business person, or I want to be a footballer, whatever it is, an athlete. The same way people have those desires, those dreams, is the same way God actually has His own dreams for us. Now, when one becomes a Christian or you're a believer, it's important that you come into the realization of the concept of God's dream. When you come to understand that there is God's dream, which is oftentimes not in alignment or not same as our own dream, you become a visionary Christian. Because God's dream is you coming into an understanding of God's plan and purposes for you, the visions of your life and destiny that God has unveiled to you. So when you have that understanding, you become a visionary Christian. You become someone that is not just living life by what it brings, or just living life by in desires or ambition or career or counsel of men. You're living life on purpose. You're living life intentionally, with intentionality. All right. So God's dream makes you a visionary Christian, and there are three important things that I would like to talk about as regards a visionary Christian. The first one is awareness. So in God's dream, there is the stage of awareness, which is when you come into an understanding of what God's dreams, plans, purposes, and compass for your life is. And this happens when you become born again. When you become born again, and you come into intimacy with Christ, because being born again, our salvation brings you into Christ, brings you into intimacy with Christ, and then that has already brought you to a position in where God can actually begin to unveil His dreams for your life. Now, don't get it twisted. I'm not saying without salvation you can't know what God's plan for your life is, or you can't have an understanding of God's dream. You might get to have understanding of the glimpse, just like the baby Christ or John the Baptist and other people in the Old Testament, and them at the time of their birth or even before their birth, there were already revelations, prophecies, words that have gone ahead of them concerning God's plans and purposes for their lives. But regardless of that revelation, it's important that you come into precision, understanding, self-awareness of God's dreams and purposes and plans for your life, not just the one you were told or the bits of it that you receive maybe in your childhood days when you are not, come to understanding of salvation and the rest. So salvation brings you into intimacy with Christ, where that positioning makes you come into understanding, come into awareness of God's dream and plans for you. The next is the acceptance phase, and at this phase now you'll move from just knowing it to accepting it, to owning it, to believing in it, to being convinced in the things that God has showed you that He has made you to become, He has made your life to become. And oftentimes when you get to this stage, you grow into conviction, because you no longer get moved by people's counsel, peer pressure, societal pressure, and all those things. You are living your life on purpose. You are definite, you are precise, you know what you are about, you know what you are living life for, and then you begin to make your choices, you begin to make your plans in line with the plans that God has showed you. You begin to order your life in line with the plans that God has showed you, in line with His dream. Your dream now gets to be substituted for God's dreams for you. You begin to align the things that you probably want for yourself into God's dream for you. Then the last stage is the action stage, where you now begin to act, you begin to take steps to fulfill the dreams that God has showed you. If it requires you going for a training, if it requires you going to school, if it requires you saving money, if it requires you meeting people, if it requires you making some sacrifices and all sorts, so you begin to take steps that will bring to reality the things that God has showed you. So this important concept is very, very important for anyone that wants to live life on purpose. The awareness phase of God's dreams for you, the acceptance phase, and the action phase. I believe this has blessed you. Bye.